There are people on this planet who have crossed oceans, continents, and time zones before they turned 18. And then there are people who were born on one small volcanic island in the South Atlantic, raised in the same cluster of houses, beneath the same cliffs, and grew into adulthood without ever leaving home. No airport, no highway, no nearby mainland, no casual weekend escape, just one village, one horizon, and a life shaped by distance so extreme that even the rest of the modern world feels theoretical. This is Edinburgh of the Seven Seas, the only settlement on Tristan da Cunha, a British island community so remote that the island's own official website calls it the world's most isolated settlement. The journey from Cape Town is normally by ship and takes about 6 days, sure, with passenger space tightly limited and weather able to delay landing altogether. Tristan da Cunha. Shipping from above, the village does not look impossible. It looks almost gentle, a neat settlement on sloping land, green patches, modest houses, a shoreline, a church, a school, a harbor that is never as simple as it sounds. But geography can be deceptive, because this place is not merely far away. It is separated by a kind of distance that changes how life works. On most islands, isolation is a romantic detail. Here it is the operating system. If you are born here, your first understanding of the world is small in scale, but enormous in meaning. You learn the weather first, then the sea, then the names of families you have known since before memory. You learn that a ship arrival is not background noise in the economy, it is an event. You learn that when something breaks, you do not assume a replacement is one click away. You learn that leaving is not a casual decision, and for some people, it is not a decision at all. They are born here, raised here, and they never leave. To people elsewhere, that sounds claustrophobic. To people here, it can sound completely natural, because when a village is this small, home is not an abstract feeling. It is everybody. The place itself has been home to a remarkable community since the early 19th century. Today, all resident islanders live in this one settlement on the north coast, beneath cliffs roughly 800 meters high. Official population updates show just over 200 Tristan Islanders, and with additional expatriate workers and visitors present at times. Settlement, https://www.tristandc.com/settlement.php. Family news, https://www.tristandc.com/familynews.php. That means the village is not just where people live, it is where almost everything happens. Childhood, schooling, work, friendship, disagreement, marriage, worship, celebration, loss, memory. There is no anonymous district to disappear into, no second town down the road, no suburbs, no neighboring island you can reach on a whim. The community is the map, and because the community is so small, identity begins early. Not in the modern sense of curating who you want to be for strangers online, but in the older sense of being known, deeply known, whose child you are, which house you grew up in, who your grandparents were, what work your family does, how you behave when someone needs help, whether you show up, whether you pull your weight. That kind of life can feel ancient in a century obsessed with personal reinvention. But there is also something brutally honest about it. In the world's most isolated village, character is not a performance. It is a long memory other people carry about you. And the island itself reinforces that seriousness. Tristan da Cunha is no tropical fantasy. It is volcanic, wind-beaten. Beautiful, yes, but beautiful in a way that never lets you forget where you are. The land rises sharply. The sea is not decorative. The weather is not always forgiving. Even arriving can be uncertain. The official shipping page makes that clear. A landing depends on conditions. Passenger places are limited, and travel can be bumped for medical emergencies or urgent island business. On an island like this, remoteness is not just measured in miles, it is measured in consequences. Shipping. https://www.tristanddc.com/shipping.php. So what does a life here actually look like? Not survival in the dramatic television sense, not castaway hardship, not a community frozen in the 19th century. Life here is more organized, more modern, and more disciplined than outsiders often expect. There is a school, a hospital, a supermarket, churches, a post office, electricity, water systems, a social hall, a bar, government offices. All the pieces of civic life still exist. They just exist in miniature, compressed into one village at the edge of the inhabitable world. And that scale changes everything. In a city, systems are invisible because they are large. Here, systems are visible because they are personal. You know who works at the school. You know who helps run the store. You know who is at sea. You know who is sick. You know who just returned on the ship. You know who did not. That kind of closeness creates something modern society often claims to want, but rarely tolerates well: real interdependence. On Tristan, the economy itself reflects that. The official island site describes a mixed economy based on subsistence farming and fishing for local food, with foreign income coming mainly from the commercial rock lobster industry, plus stamps, coins, limited tourism, and handicrafts. Every family is involved in farming. Land is communally owned. Stock numbers are controlled. Adults often combine salaried work with fishing, farming, so I'm building repairs and helping neighbors. Economy, https://www.tristanddc.com/economy.php. That one paragraph explains almost everything about how a person can be born here, raised here, and never leave. Because life on Tristan is not designed around endless consumption. It is designed around stability, participation, practical skill, and the understanding that comfort does not come from abundance. It comes from continuity. A family here might tend potatoes, keep animals, work a government job, fish in season, help repair a roof, and still turn up to a social event that evening. Not because they are performing some picturesque version of traditional island life for tourists, but because in a place this small, the line between private life and public responsibility has always been thin. You do your own work, and you help keep the village alive. That begins young. A child growing up here is not just being raised by parents. They are being raised by repetition, by weather, by routine, by being useful, by understanding that the island does not care about your excuses. The rhythm of life teaches that in subtle ways. You notice how adults organize around seasons. You notice how ship schedules matter. You notice that imported goods are important, but they are not the foundation under your feet. The foundation is local. Potatoes, livestock, fishing, repairs, memory, cooperation. The foundation is knowing how to live where you are. And the strange thing is, for someone born here, that life might not initially feel isolated at all. How can it? Isolation is a comparison. You only feel cut off from somewhere else if that somewhere else has become emotionally real to you. But if you are born into a village where everybody knows you, where the sea defines the edge of normal, where the village hall and the potato patches and the harbor are woven into one complete world, then home does not feel small at first. It feels entire. That is what people from large countries often fail to understand. They imagine isolation as emptiness. But for communities like this, isolation can also create density. The social world becomes denser because there are fewer people to spread meaning across. A birthday matters more. A departure matters more. An illness matters more. A ship matters more. A death matters more. A return matters more than most outsiders can imagine. And return is one of the deepest themes in Tristan's history, because this is also a community that once had to leave. In 1961, a volcanic eruption forced the evacuation of the population to England, and yet the islanders returned. The official Tristan history pages describe that evacuation as a volcanic interlude rather than an ending, a telling phrase for a community that experienced modern Britain firsthand and still chose home. 1961 to 1963, volcanic interlude, https://www.trustndc.com/history 1961-1963.php. That may be the most revealing fact about Tristan da Cunha. People sometimes ask how anyone could bear to stay in a place so remote. History provides a sharper question. How strong must attachment be for an entire community to come back after being removed from it? Because once you understand that, or never left, stops sounding like limitation alone. It begins to sound like loyalty, inheritance, a choice shaped not just by geography, but by belonging so complete that other places, however easier, do not feel like yours. And belonging here is unusually literal. The settlement page notes that the resident island community descends from original settlers and long associated family lines. On a small island with such deep continuity, a person is not just living in a house, they are living inside a chain of memory. Settlement. That does not mean life is quaint or conflict-free. Any close community has pressures, and closeness at this scale can be heavy. There is little anonymity, little escape, little room to reinvent yourself without everyone noticing. Ambition has to negotiate with geography. Privacy has to negotiate with community memory. And for younger people especially, the question of leaving must carry a different emotional charge than it does anywhere else. Because leaving here is not just moving away. It is crossing a psychological frontier. It is departing a world in which nearly every face is familiar, and entering one where almost none are. It is going from one village to the planet. That is an enormous jump. For someone raised in London or Cape Town or New York, the outside world unfolds gradually. Neighborhood to city, city to region, region to country, country to somewhere farther still. For someone on Tristan, the scale changes violently. Village to ship, ship to continent, home to everything else. No wonder some never leave. And not because they are unaware of the larger world, but because the larger world arrives first as abstraction, as stories, cargo, visitors, news, television, maybe study plans, maybe medical travel, maybe work possibilities, while home remains concrete. Home has texture, a particular road, a particular church bell, a particular way the cliffs look in bad weather, a particular smell when the sea is rough, a particular doorway, a familiar dog, a known voice outside, a hall where everyone gathers. These things are small until you lose them. Then they become the structure of a life, and that is why remoteness alone does not explain Tristan. People elsewhere endure harsh climates and distance without developing this same kind of attachment. What makes Tristan different is that the island's isolation produced not just endurance, but a distinct social design. Equality mattered early in the settlement's history. Communal land still shapes the economy. Outsiders cannot simply buy land and settle. The village is not a luxury outpost for whoever can afford it. It remains, in a very real sense, a community before it is a destination. Economy, https://www.tristandec.com/economy.php. That matters, because in many remote places, isolation eventually gets commercialized. It becomes a brand, a spectacle, an escape hatch for wealthy outsiders. But Tristan has held on to a harder, older logic. This place is first for the people who belong to it. That does not mean life is easy. Medical care is limited by distance. Travel is constrained by ships and weather. Imported supplies are never trivial. Economic opportunity is narrower than in larger societies. And every family must live with the knowledge that the island's beauty is inseparable from its vulnerability. Volcanic history proved that. The ocean proves it whenever access is delayed. The population size proves it every time one skilled person matters a little more because there are not many others to take their place. But difficulty does not automatically produce misery. Sometimes it produces clarity. Here, the value of a person is easier to see because the community cannot afford to waste people. Everybody matters more in a village of this size, not as a slogan, as a practical fact. The teacher matters more. The mechanic matters more. The fisherman matters more. The nurse matters more. The person who can build, fix, organize, host, or steady others matters more. And when everybody matters more, staying takes on a different meaning. In many wealthy societies, leaving is treated as proof of growth. You move on, move up, move out. But on Tristan da Cunha, staying can also be a form of adulthood, of commitment, of saying, "This place raised me, and I will help carry it." That is not an easier life than departure. In some ways, it may be harder, because staying means accepting repetition, responsibility, the impossibility of distance from the people who know you best, the reality that the world may call your home remote, tiny, obscure, and improbable, while you still wake up and do the necessary work of making it livable. There is something deeply dignified in that, and maybe that is why stories about the world's most isolated village fascinate outsiders. Not just because the place is remote, but because it presents a challenge to modern assumptions. We are taught that a full life must widen constantly. More places, more contacts, more movement, more options, more novelty. And yet here is a community where some people are born, raised, and remain in the same settlement their whole lives, not because history forgot them, but because home retained enough meaning to outweigh departure. That does not make Tristan a model for everyone, nor should it. The village exists under conditions too specific to romanticize casually, but it does reveal something important. A life does not become small simply because it is geographically contained. Sometimes a life becomes larger in moral weight, precisely because it is rooted in people who must keep choosing one another, rooted in work that still has visible consequences, rooted in a place where belonging is not a marketing phrase, but an everyday obligation. And the island itself seems to reinforce that lesson. One settlement, one community, one impossible location in the South Atlantic. If you stand there long enough, the usual measures of importance begin to slip. It no longer seems obvious that a place matters only if it is connected to everything. Maybe a place can matter because it is not. Maybe a village becomes more meaningful, not less, when reaching it requires effort, patience, and permission from weather and sea. Maybe a human life can be deep without being wide. Maybe the people who never left did not fail to see the world. Maybe they saw their world clearly enough to stay. That may be the real story of Tristan da Cunha. Not that it is remote, not that the village is tiny, not even that it is called the most isolated settlement on earth. The real story is that isolation did not erase community here. It intensified it. It made home heavier, more binding, more visible, more difficult to replace. And so in Edinburgh of the Seven Seas, there are still people for whom life is measured not by how far they traveled, but by how faithfully they remain. Born here, raised here, never left. On most maps, that sounds like the edge of the world. To them, it is simply home.